Hello everyone, it's Angie here at Beads and Plenty More. Today I thought I'd talk to you about split rings and jump rings and where you can use them and some tips and techniques for using them. So a split ring is basically like a small key ring. It goes around twice. And then jump rings are a ring that will open up. And jump rings are used primarily to attach one thing to another. And the opening comes in handy because you can hook one thing onto the next. So working with jump rings, which is where I think I'm going to start, and I'll just put the split rings off to the side for now, you're going to use needle nose pliers. So I've got two sets of needle nose pliers here. One set is a basic needle nose and the other set is a bent nose plier. You can use two pairs of needle nose pliers, but having the bent nose is nice if you're doing a lot of jump rings because it gives your hand a better position. Because when I'm grabbing with the needle nose, I've got both my hands up close together because I want to point the tips away from me. When I grab with the bent nose pliers, my hand is in a more natural position. So that's tip number one. Again, I'm holding with one. I'm going to basically point my tips up towards the tip. And I'm going to put the other pair here. Now one pair is just holding, my left hand is just holding it. The other pair is going to pull the ring open. So I'll do that so that you can see it from above there. So when I pull it, I'm really just bending it open. I'm not pulling it apart from left to right or whatever. So then I can hook whatever I need to hook on. I've got a smaller one here that I plan to hook something small on. So in this case, I'm going to hook a pendant. And the reason that I'm hooking this one on is because if I just strung this through the cording as is, it would hang the wrong way. It would hang like this. So by hooking the ring on, I'm changing the direction of it. Now when it comes to closing it back up again, I want to push in a little bit. So I'm pushing in with this plier and I'm pushing in with my right hand plier. And I'm taking it past where it needs to go. I think this is probably easier if I hold it this way. So you can see that I've taken it past where it needs to go, and by pushing in, I don't know if the camera picked up the little snapping sound that it made, but that's how I know that my ring is closed. So if that ring happened to be a ring that maybe wasn't as closed, so I'm deliberately pulling this apart the wrong way, I'm going to have to work a little more to get it back together. So I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth, and you can see me doing that, and eventually it will match up. So there's the ring back together. So as far as tools go, needle nose pliers are generally the best for it. There is a few specialty tools on the market, and one of them is this little ring here. If you're doing a lot of chainmail and stuff, this is a great way for opening them up because you use the ring to basically pry them open. So it allows you to work with just one pair of pliers. So this pair is just really just holding, and the ring is doing the opening. I think I've got my little sample rings open already. You can actually close up with the ring too. I find it's easier with a second pair of pliers than to try and use the ring to do it. But if you're just doing a few, certainly the ring works. So that's basics of jump rings. You can actually make your own as well. So I grabbed some red wire deliberately because this is one time where you may want to actually make your own jump ring because you want your red wire to match your red project or whatever. So I've got a pair of round nose pliers here. Round nose pliers have entirely round barrels. And I'm just going to grab the wire where about the size I want my ring to be. And I'm going to create a coil. So because I want my coil to all be similar in size, I'm just working in the same spot. That's probably enough for what I want to show you with. So I've got this little coil here, and I'm going to take some wire cutters. Now with wire cutters, the flat side of the wire cutter is the side that's going to cut a flush cut. So my first cut, I'm going to cut flush. Now to cut the other side of my ring, I'm going to flip the cutters over so that I'm cutting a flush cut the other way. And there's my ring. So I'll just take the little burr off the beginning of that one again, and then flip it over to create the second cut. So again, just a little cut to take the burr off, the non-flush cut, and then you cut the second one, and you end up with some rings. Now, most wire that you work with has a copper core to it, so it's a little more soft than the pre-made formed rings. So you do have to be a little bit more conscientious about where you're using these and whether or not they'll work for your project, because they are a little softer, they will pull apart a little easier. It makes the wire easier to work with, but it also means that you have to factor that in when you're working with your rings. Now, as far as rings go, I showed you with round nose pliers, but there is also these kinds of tools on the market. This one has stepped pliers, which allows you to do a whole bunch of rings at one gauge or whatever. It keeps you from moving up or down the taper and having a whole bunch of rings that don't match. There's also ones that have longer barrels, and there's also jump ring makers. Now, the advantage to this one is, you may have noticed with the red wire, I was squeezing a little bit as I was turning the wire, and I actually did put some marks on the wire with my pliers. I actually took a little bit of the red coating off. This one, you're not squeezing against another barrel, so you'll just coil around the coil by itself, and you won't actually put any marks on the wire. Moving on to split rings, there is a tool as well for them. This is a split ring plier, and it has the little notch here that allows you to get in between the two rings that make up the split ring and actually open them up enough that you can hook something on. So I've got a little charm here that I would normally put on a bracelet. That's just a little guy that I don't want, if my bracelet got tugged, for the charm to come loose. So I'm going to put a split ring instead of a jump ring on. And I'm just going to prop it open here and get my charm hooked. And then I usually just use a pair of needle nose pliers to coil it the rest of the way around. And there's my little charm. So again, there's multiple tools that can be used as split ring pliers. There's this one here that is your basic plier. And then there's also these little tweezers. And the tweezers, actually, we tested them in the store and we actually found they were pretty good. If you're doing hundreds of rings, you probably want the actual plier, but if you're doing just a few rings, these tweezers work quite well. So I hope that's useful information, and I hope you enjoyed that. Have a good weekend.